Bloomberg's Henrique Almeida.
Good afternoon. Our next guest here today is Vera Sousa, Angola's finance minister. For those of you who don't know, Vera Sousa was Angola's first female finance minister. She's also the youngest minister to serve in President João Lourenço's government. But even though she's just 38 years old, her experience in leadership roles in Angola speaks for itself. Before becoming finance minister, Vera Sousa was a regular guest on TV speaking on financial markets. She's an author of a book in public finance. And later, she became the head of Angola's Capital Markets Commission. Now, as finance minister, she's completed a 3-year program with the IMF, implemented painful reforms like the liberalization of the Angolan Kwanza, succeeded on extending foreign debt repayments with creditors during COVID, and had to deal with a 5-year recession that just ended in 2020. Today, her efforts seem to be paying off. Angola's economy is set to grow almost 3% this year. The Kwanza has become one of the world's best performing currencies, and Angola recently became the second African nation after Nigeria to sell debt in international markets. But that's not all. Angola is gearing up now for its first ever IPO. In June 9, it plans to sell shares in the nation's biggest bank, Bank of Angola. That will mark the start of trading in Angola's stock exchange. I would now like to invite you to join me in the virtual interview with Vera Sousa. Thank you.
Minister Sousa, thank you for joining us today for this virtual interview. I know financial markets is an area you're familiar with, so I'd like to start by asking you if you think the timing is right for Bank of Angola, Angola's biggest bank, to list shares in the Luanda Stock Exchange next month.
Thank you for the question. Well, it's a good question because we live moments of uncertainty and probably with less liquidity available for investing in some types of assets. But our experience shows that even under difficult moments, we can manage to moving forward, implementing our programs. Looking back to the past 2 years and 9 months, when the privatization program started, we had COVID, we had a financial and economic crisis. And despite that, we managed to sell 84 assets from our privatization program. So it's quite remarkable considering the challenges of the circumstances. So we are optimistic about this offering, this IPO. The local investors probably would be the first to put themselves on the pole position to participate. But the international investors that already know the market, the opportunity and the challenges, probably they will also follow it closely and at the end of the day, maybe make an offer. So yes, we think we can manage to move forward despite all the circumstances that we are living with.
So I know other listings are on the way, but what investors are really thinking about is when Angola will carry out the IPO of state-owned oil companies Sonangol and YAM. When will that be, Mr. Minister?
That's the $1 million question. Well, we want to move on when we feel ready. We don't want to move and feel and realize that the market is still uncomfortable or suspicious about any information that the company didn't disclose as better as possible. So we want to go with a balance sheet as transparent as possible, with all the assets recovery issues completely solved, the trials and the lawsuits. So we still have a complex a complex moment within Sonangol. In YAM, a little bit less, but both companies are under a very complex restructuring program. When it finished, we hope at 1 year, 1.5 years, when it finished, we will feel more comfortable to go through a due diligence, and after that, to move on selling a minority part of those companies.
So there is no fixed date yet for the IPO of Sonangol, is there? Not yet.
Not a fixed date. We are working for 12 to 18 months perspective goal, but depends on how far we will move under the process that are ongoing regarding some assets that Sonangol are privatizing, some assets that Sonangol are recovering, and also the register of some assets that are it's already recovered but need to be within the books of Sonangol.
Great. Moving on, I'd like to ask you a question about the current international setting. The EU has indicated that it plans to step up cooperation with African countries to increase the supply of oil and gas to the Euro region. Is this something Angola is ready to do? And if so, has Angola held talks with the EU about boosting energy supplies?
We have the will, we have the political will, and we have the openness to do it. We still work with EU in so many fronts that work in one more. It's perfectly, it's completely reasonable. But we need to do a lot of homework to be ready to address that needs. What I mean by that, because we are coming from a scenario where our oil production were falling. So we were motivating the oil companies to do more investments. We revised our law on marginal fields. We revise our fiscal framework for whom are investing on that sector, and we are seeing the first signs of this coming, but it will take time. The investments start moving now, and we will see in 2 to 5 years the results of the investments that are happening now. So yes, we want to do it. Yes, we are preparing ourselves to do it, but it will take time for us to be able to address in the expectations that will come from the EU if we compare to our actual production capacity.
For now, higher crude prices has added extra revenue for Angola's coffers. How do you plan to use that extra revenue, Minister?
First of all, we want to rebuild our treasury reserves. We want to be ready to address future challenges. We don't want to revive the experience that we live with COVID. So we build our treasury reserves. We want to be less aggressive on the financing side. So go less for financing, external and internal, and especially internal if we consider the potential of crowding out, because we are totally committed with diversification of our economy. For that to happen, we need to give to the commercial banks space for them to finance the private sector. So if we go less to the internal market, we will see more from the liquidity of the system going to the private sector. So it's something that we also want to address. Use less space from our financing needs and compensate with these extra revenues that will come. So also some projects that used to be there to be finished with more than 80% of physical execution is something that we also want to address, close it and put it at disposal of the population, because it's costly to make them unfinished for so many years.
so you don't want to take many risks. But how do you see oil prices? I mean, they're trading at above $100 per barrel. Do you expect oil prices to remain at that level for some time?
Well, we need to consider that the circumstances that are putting the price at that level are geopolitical, so are not structural. So we want to be conservative because we know that if the geopolitical tension be solved, then we start in a new era of more peaceful moments. Probably we will see the price dropping. So that's why we want to be as conservative as possible, to be ready to not take advantage of that windfall. So $59 per barrel is the price that we are ready to work with, because we prepare our 2022 budget with that price. Anything above this, we intend to use in the terms that I just mentioned.
Minister, I'll wrap this up with the last question, and I wanted to ask you about your economic forecasts. Angola has been benefiting from higher oil prices and also diversifying its economy. I know you have a projection of 2.4% growth for this year. Are you revising that forecast? And just finally, do you plan to issue more Eurobonds this year? You were the second country to do so in Africa this year. Are you planning to issue more Eurobonds this year? Thank you.
Regarding the GDP, yes, the end of March projections, we are seeing our GDP growing slightly more than 2.4%, 2.7 is what we are expecting, considering the same oil production that we have in our budget, $1.14 million barrels per day, and $100 per barrel, considering that price of reference. So 2.7 instead of 2.4. Let's see what happened. Regarding the Eurobond market, well, we are studying now the ESG framework. We are studying that possibility. We are in a very early stage, so we didn't decide yet when we want to move on. But yes, it's something that we are looking at. ESG, and also a possible opportunity for going further with liability management operations. So that's the two windows that we are exploring.
Minister Vera Sousa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.